All right, hello everybody. Let's do this. Our first lesson on statistics. What I'd like you to do is think about when you hear this word or when you see it, what are some things that come to your mind? Pause the video and just think of some ideas that you think about, right? Here, within statistics in this topic, we will be studying data, right? So the idea is, how do we organize data? How do we interpret data? And then how do we create the visual to show the data values very well? Okay, so here what Mr. Gajari did was he asked some Algebra 1 students, he said, hey, how long does it take for you to get to school? Right? That was the question he asked some Algebra 1 students, and the students responded in minutes, and here were the data values. These are what some of the students responded with. They said, hey, mister, it takes me 30 minutes to get to school, 15 minutes, 35 minutes, and so on. So then the question I ask is, what does this data mean? Can it help us understand anything within our school or within our Algebra 1 students? So before anything, what I'd like you to do is pause the video and have this in your notes, right? This will be the intro to the lesson. And then for the second part over here, once you're done copying it down, let's take a second to organize the data. You could pause the video again, and what I'd like you to do is organize the data values from least to greatest. Because right now, when I'm taking a look at these data values, right, in these minutes, it feels like it's all over the place. It would be really nice if it was in order from least to greatest. So take your time and do that, while Mr. Giraffe and I just hang out. All right, so let's say you came back, and what should it look like when we organize these data values? Sorry, I wrote it down over here. It should look something like this, right? It goes 15, 20, 20, 20, 30, la 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 la. So you should have that on your paper. Okay, so now let's go to the next page over here, and let's organize the data values even better. What we want to do is we want to create a frequency distribution. So what we're going to do is, with these data values, we're going to organize them into intervals, right? So anybody, if it takes anybody 0 to 19 minutes to get to school, then we're going to mark a tick for them. 20 to 39 minutes, we'll mark a tick for them, and so on and so on. So let's go through the data values, right? So 15 minutes would go here, right? All right, that's done. 20 minutes would go here. So notice there are 3 20 minutes. There's another 30 minute that goes here. And then how do I show 5? Here. 35 goes there. And now 40, what happens with 40? 40 goes here. 45, 45, 50, 50. So 2, 3, 4, la. And then the 60 and the 65 right here. Hold on one second. Bam, bam. Okay. So now here, let's see. How many students took less than 19 minutes or so? It was just one student. How many students were here? About 6 students. 5 students. 2 students. Okay. And how many students are there in total that Mr. G asked? Let's see, 7, 12, so 14 students. Okay, now here, this looks very nice, but let's create a picture. Let's create a histogram, okay? Let's create a histogram. So take a second. What I'd like you to do is, wait, let me move this over here. And, oh, one thing is, I should have probably said this before, but you could grab a ruler to make these nice lines. And let's take a look at this part over here. Create a histogram, right? So, let me move this a little bit. Sorry. Okie dokie. Here, using your ruler, you could create this L shape right here, right? And what does a histogram look like? Well, let's just take a look at one thing that should seem familiar with you, and that's a bar graph, right? Notice that within a bar, what's the difference between a bar graph and a histogram? There are more technical ideas, but the idea is, notice that within a bar graph, they have gaps, and a histogram, there are no gaps. And here, the rectangular, actually, oh, my bad. I should have given you this one, sorry. Here, within a histogram, we're going to show the class intervals over here and the frequency over here. And something to notice, and please have this in your notes, right? Take a second, pause the video and write this in your notes. There are no gaps between the intervals, and the rectangles are of equal width. So what am I talking about over here? Like here, notice that within a bar graph, they have gaps, but a histogram has no gaps, and the length of the rectangles have to be the same, okay? And there are other more detailed things, but we'll go through that a little bit later. So let's create a histogram from these data values, right? What should happen with the frequency, right? The frequency is showing which part of this table, it's showing this part over here, right? So like if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? We could put this over here, right? This is the frequency of how many data values that are between 0 and 19, between 20 and 39, right? And then what I'd like you to do is grab your ruler. Because the rectangles need to have equal width, what we could do is let's grab our ruler like this. And let me make sure I get this part over here. Grab the ruler. Let's make the intervals 1 inch long. So notice that if I put the 0 over here at the intersection, right? You can make, this is one interval, this is the second one, this is the third one, this is the fourth one. Okay, and then what are we going to put in our first interval? We'll do 0 to 19. The next interval will be 20 to 39, right? We're going to show, right? The first interval is this one. We put it here. The next one is this 20 to 39. We put it here. 40 to 59 will be here. And 60 to 79 will be here. Okay? And then let's see, how many students did it take for them to arrive, like how many were less than 19 or, I'm sorry, how many students took less than 19 minutes to arrive to school? It was just one student. Okay, so then I create one rectangle like that. What about 20 to 39? How many students was it? 6 students. So what I do is, you could grab your ruler if you want, and I'll bring this up to the 6, right? So maybe something like this, and grab your ruler, and you could be nice and neat, and have this here. Okay, how many was it between 40 and 59? It was 5, so I could do this. Grab my ruler, make a nice line. And then 60 to 79, how many? It was just 2 students. And bam. And notice that there are no, wait, let me write this here. Notice that there are no gaps between the intervals. I have no gaps. And the rectangles are of equal width. And then here is a nice histogram. And let's give it a name. Pause the video. What would you name this histogram, right? Arrival time for Algebra 1 students. Or like how long it takes for some Algebra 1 students to get to MCHS. Cool. Okay, we made a histogram. Let's put a nice happy face. Next part. And then how much time is this? Only 9 minutes? Wow, that was pretty fast. I thought it would take much longer. Here, this part will be very, very important. So let's take a look at this part over here. Here, let's take a look at these final questions. Let's take a look at this one. Question 5. It says, what information, and if you want, take a second and pause the video to write this down, right? Pause the video. And here, what information can you gather from, I should say, you could say the histogram or a histogram, right? Like, notice when we gathered the data values and then we took the picture of it, or we drew the picture of it, like in this visual representation. In statistics, we talked about organizing the data values. Now we need to interpret the data values. Like here, what can you interpret from this graph, right? And here, let me write this over here for this part here. Looking at the graph, right? Looking at the graph, what can you conclude about how long it takes for some Algebra 1 students, to arrive to school? Pause the video and think. Write a sentence or two of what the histogram implies, right? So pause the video, and what can you gather from this? What does this information mean to you? Okay? Pause the video and think about it. Take your time and write a sentence or two about what you can gather from this visual. Right? Okay. What are some things? I guess, right, like just looking at the picture, it looks like there are a lot of students who aren't too far away from school, right? 20 to 40 minutes, right, or 39 minutes isn't too bad to get to school. But then there are some students who take a long time to get to school. And maybe some students live very, very close by, right? And then maybe these students are late for period 1, right? Would there be a correlation over there for these students who take a long time to get to school? You see, that's why statistics is nice, because it helps us think about these questions. Here, what I'd like you to do is take a second and reflect how does a histogram look like a bar graph? How are they different, right? What are the similarities? What are the differences? You could write them down. And yeah, let's take a look. Pause the video and think about it. Don't just wait for me to do it. Pause the video and think about what differences do you notice, right? So I guess we could write it down over here. Histogram, no gaps, equal width, right? Equal width in terms of the rectangle. And one really important thing is, let's look at the x-axis here. Notice that what this question is saying, it's saying, oh, hey, what is your favorite color? So if I ask some students, hey, what is your favorite color? How many students said red? Okay, 3 students. How many students said blue? 4 students, right? But notice that what we're asking is qualitative. And I'll explain more what that means. Like, notice it's not representing a numerical value for the x-axis, but for histogram, it must. You can't put that idea of red, blue, or green, or qualitative data for an x-axis. Okay. And the final part, very, very important, this is my favorite question. What I want you to do is grab a sticky note, and I'll put it on your table. What kind of data values interest you? What do you want to find out about, right? Like, what do you want to find out more about in terms of finding data? Is there something that you want to look up? Like, imagine if it was something like basketball, statistics, right? Something about your favorite sport. What about things that are happening in your community, right? What is something that interests you? And what I'd like you to do is write your name and write a sentence or two of something that you want to find out more about. And we'll talk about it in class. Okay, enjoy.